The Supreme Court says it is adopting a code of ethics, but it has no means of enforcement. The Supreme Court on Monday adopted its first code of ethics, in the face of sustained criticism over undisclosed trips and gifts from wealthy benefactors to some justices, but the code lacks a means of enforcement. The policy, agreed to by all 9 justices, does not appear to impose any significant new requirements and leaves compliance entirely to each justice. Indeed, the justices said they have long adhered to ethics standards and suggested that criticism of the court over ethics was the product of misunderstanding, rather than any missteps by the justices. The absence of a code, however, has led in recent years to the misunderstanding that the justices of this court, unlike all other jurists in this country, regard themselves as unrestricted by any ethics rules, the justices wrote in an unsigned statement that accompanied the code. The ethics issue has vexed the court for several months, over a series of stories questioning the ethical practices of the justices. Many of those stories focused on Justice Clarence Thomas and his failure to disclose travel, other hospitality and additional financial ties with wealthy conservative donors including Harlan Crow and the Koch brothers. But Justices Samuel Alito and Sonia Sotomayor also have been under scrutiny. In September, Justice Elena Kagan acknowledged that there were disagreements among the justices over the contents of an ethics code, but did not specify what they were. The justices achieved unanimity Monday, but predictably offered no explanation for how they got there. Liberal critics of the court were not satisfied, with one group saying the code reads a lot more like a friendly suggestion than a binding, enforceable guideline. A court ethics code proposed by White House that cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee without any Republican support would allow for complaints and investigation by lower court judges. 3 justices, Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh and Kagan, have voiced support for an ethics code in recent months. Public trust in and approval of the court is hovering near record lows, according to a Gallup poll released just before the court's new term began on October 2. As recently as last week, Senator Dick Durbin, D.L., chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said the justices could quiet some of the criticism and a Democratic push to impose an ethics code on the court by putting in place their own policy. Republicans complained that Democrats were mostly reacting to decisions they didn't like from the conservative-dominated court, including overturning the nationwide right to an abortion. The Democratic-backed ethics bill also would require that justices provide more information about potential conflicts of interest and written explanations about the decisions not to recuse. It would also seek to improve transparency around gifts received by justices. The push for an ethics code was jump-started by a series of stories by the investigative news site ProPublica detailing the relationship between Crow and Thomas. Crow has for more than 2 decades paid for nearly annual vacations, purchased from Thomas and others the Georgia home in which the justice's mother still lives, and helped pay for the private schooling for a relative. The court's initial step on ethics, in the spring, also did not mollify critics. Roberts declined an invitation from Durbin to testify before the Judiciary Panel, but the Chief Justice provided a statement on ethics principles and practices, signed by all 9 justices, that described the ethical rules they follow about travel, gifts and outside income. The The statement provided by Roberts said that the 9 justices reaffirm and restate foundational ethics principles and practices to which they subscribe in carrying out their responsibilities as members of the Supreme Court of the United States. The statement promised at least some small additional disclosure when one or more among them opts not to take part in a case. But the justices have been inconsistent in doing so since.